Homovision.
My name is Paul and I live in London.
So what actually is, I mean, you got married,
Yeah.
you had the civil partnership.
Yep.
So what was the background to that anyway? How did that all start? And
Well, we've been together for several years. We met on Gaydar. It was one of those Gaydar relationships that actually worked out. And we lived together in a number of different places. We lived all over London. I think after a certain amount of time, we just decided that was the right thing to do.
to get the civil partnership in.
Yeah, there were many reasons for that. I mean, all the standard ones you always hear about. Visitation rights, inheritance, all those kind of things. And we didn't want to go through the legal hassle of having to contest things later on.
So how long were you together anyway, originally?
We'd been together around 4.5 years prior to that.
And then you got married after 4.5 years?
Yeah. So we figured that was long enough to figure we were serious.
And how long was the actual marriage for anyway?
About 1.5 years.
Okay.
Well, a little bit less than 1.5 years.
Okay. So then obviously things started to go wrong and everything.
Yeah. No, there were some problems. There had been some problems earlier in the relationship. We got those resolved, and then there were some problems later on, which, when they got surfaced, I filed for divorce.
Okay. And then you obviously came, saw some problems when you actually filed for divorce. So what was the main issues that you found?
In filing for divorce?
Yeah.
The complexity of it, finding out really that it really is like straight marriage. So if you sort of walk into the situation and you look at the government websites and you look at the various websites put up by Terrence Higgins Trust or whoever, and they're telling you how fantastic it is, and it is, I suppose, in lots of different ways. But when it comes down to the actual what happens if it doesn't work, they're really strangely quiet about that. And they kind of talk, well, it's kind of like straight marriage, without really going into a lot of the details about what that means for gay men. And since we're gay men, we're not typically taught, or we don't even really think about it. It's not part of our mental landscape what a divorce could be, what that entails, because we don't think about it. We were never brought up even thinking there was a possibility to get married, much less divorced. So what it really means is that there's things like potential alimony. There's things like division of assets that you may never even have considered. And the law really starts from a position of 50-50. So regardless of what you brought into the relationship, regardless of what you took out of the relationship, and regardless of your behavior in the relationship, the starting point is 50-50. So if you think that, that's not right in your particular case, then you've got to make a strong legal case for that, and that can be very expensive.
How did you actually resolve that? I mean, it wasn't just as simple as you say. So.
No, it meant several months of litigation, going to lawyers. It was very expensive, actually. It was a very painful and expensive legal process. It was not anything that I had ever gambled on, and I never thought that would happen to me in my entire life.
So what do you think in terms of policy, like government policy towards gay marriage? Do you think it should be different for...
Yeah. I think it's inherently different. I think the government policy on gay marriage right now is that they're trying to base it, and it's largely, also to a large extent, based on gay liberation activists who really want to say, hey, guess what, we're equal in every single possible way. We've all got the same rights, the same obligations, but actually that model doesn't work. Straight marriage is still based very much on kind of 1950s breadwinner and housewife type of model. The wife stays at home, she's taking care of the kids, hubby finds a new trophy wife, dumps her, she's got nowhere to go, she's got no skills, she's basically effectively been de-skilled by marriage. So she has a right to half of the assets, and that would make sense in that context. Gay men, however, typically, there's not a wife and there's not a husband and there's not somebody who's working or someone who stays at home necessarily, and both have an equal chance to contribute. It's not like we're dealing in a situation where you've got one group of people who are very de-skilled women and very, very well-skilled men in the 1950s. It just doesn't obtain. But the government policy really effectively. Really confuses things, I think, and it doesn't really make sense for gay men. It doesn't reflect the reality we live in whatsoever. It kind of pushes us into a 1950s straight model, which is the last thing in the world I think you want to be in.
What would you suggest?
Well, I would suggest why not look at contribution. What did the two partners bring into the relationship over the course of the relationship? And that would solve an awful lot of problems right there. Certainly in my case that would have. And in the case of also, look at behavior. I mean, I think there's lots of possibilities for drama in gay relationships in general. And when you start combining that with sometimes a really kind of silly drama that obtains a lot, with then financial consequences, which can be quite severe later on, it's kind of crazy. You need to look at behavior in that particular case. There's way too many crazy things happening in the gay world to not take that into consideration.
So, would you have this civil partnership now if you knew what a civil partnership meant?
No.
Really?
No. No way. Absolutely not. I think it's a wonderful idea, but at this point, I think I would really have to know an awful lot about the person and really, really, really trust them in a way that I would find difficult now.
And advice to any of the gay couples, what would you say to them if they're thinking about having a civil partnership?
If at all possible, regardless of what your lawyer tells you, if at all possible, go for prenuptial. I was told by my lawyer that had I done that, my case would have been much easier. We didn't do that because at the time, one of our friends said that they weren't honored in the UK. Actually, although the case law is still undetermined, it does make a difference. So if all possible, do that. And if you can't do that, then really seriously reconsider whether you want to get into it in the first place. I think also people should really look at why are they getting into it in the first place. Are they getting into it because they want to replicate something that their parents had? Are they really in love with each other? Or do they just want a sense of financial security? Do they want to be able to say that they got a boyfriend and they got married? It's a very dramatic kind of thing. It's fabulous to have a wedding and have a wedding ceremony and this and that, but then the consequences of that go on for years. And people who are saying you've got to get married, they're really pushing a political agenda, which may or may not be in the best interest of people who actually get married.
Do you think we're just following like a traditional view of marriage instead of making our own?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's what they are doing. They're saying basically because we want to be equal in every single possible way, we're going to adopt all these straitjackets and all these shackles of straight marriage, and we're going to take them on too to show how proud we are that we can be 1950s housewives and husbands. But we're not. We've fought for a long time to get away from that model, and there's no reason why we should be adopting that, even if it's supposedly for liberation.
Homovision.